Hello, hello. Welcome to a new episode of the Between Two Tales podcast. We are on episode 11. It is Super Bowl weekend. My name is Kevin, and I'm joined by my co-host Dave. We appreciate all the new subscribers and followers that have been watching our stuff. It means a lot to us since we kind of started this not knowing if we was even going to go anywhere. Right? This is kind of an experiment to us. But for all the new people here, Dave, why don't you tell them what this show is about?
Hopefully, we have some repeats coming back to watch. But for all of you new folks, what you're about to witness is something pretty astounding and amazing as far as when it comes to writing. So, Kevin is going to generate 5 random words. We have not seen these words and already generate them. He'll show the screen. You'll be able to see the words generate. And we got to create a story using or incorporating those 5 words. While that's happening, I'll begin our timer for 90 minutes, and we have to complete this entire story in that time. And then at the end, we're going to read out the whole story to you. And then, Kevin, after we read out our story,
we're going to compare our story to our AI overlords and see how we match up creatively against them. So far, we've been doing this for 10 or so episodes, and we're undefeated. The AI has come close, I'd say, once. It gave kind of a threat. But the rest of it, no chance. But, the AI is getting smarter. We're watching it getting smarter, which is kind of interesting. Might be scary to some of you, but it's kind of interesting. But us storytellers, human creative power, still has its merit as of today. All right, so let me share my screen.
All right.
And we will generate these words.
I'll go ahead and get our timer ready.
All right. So 1 spin. Everyone knows the rules.
Timer has begun.
Nice. Horizon. Consumer.
Okay.
Cupboard. Disaster. Deprivation. There's some words in here that go well together. Disaster and deprivation.
Yeah.
Consumer, cupboard. Horizon. Cupboard. That just reminds me of an old Mad TV skit where they're doing a Mad TV skit of R. Kelly's song.
Oh, man.
Trapped in the closet. He's like, we're trapped in the cupboard. Disaster. That could be the whole can lead to the mission of the story or lead to conflict of the story. Deprivation.
Yeah, deprivation is interesting to me because there's a couple different ways here, right? But when I look up the definition, just to really understand, damaging lack of material benefits considered to be basic necessities in a society. There's also the lack or denial of something, which is the way I was kind of thinking of it. The lack of something that is required or necessary. But the damaging lack of material benefits considered to be basic necessities in society. There's a whole society aspect to that could be interesting. And then more maybe general, or at least something that we can work into in a more general sense, the lack or denial of something like sleep.
Sleep deprivation.
Lack of sleep, yeah.
Yeah, another form is like depriving something of someone.
Depriving something, yeah.
There is no cereal left in the cupboard, so they're being deprived of their nutrients.
Yeah, so the consumer has to needs to go buy some more cereal because they're being deprived.
That's right.
And then now this is a disaster. And on the horizon, they're going to walk into the store, yell at the manager, and say, why is there no cereal in my cupboard? You're supposed to deliver it. Horizon is one of those words, because when kind of use it the way I just use it right now, right? As far as something is coming on the horizon, this for jokes, this customer is coming and there's a horizon event happening, right? But then, there's also the literal horizon, speaking in terms of like the Earth. So, you could have like an event horizon. You could have someone watching the horizon.
Yep.
Oh, it's like a nice little term. This person wanted to broaden their horizon.
That too, yeah.
The limit of a person's mental perception, experience, and so on. Yeah. Go broaden their horizon.
Let's see. I was just thinking about, I don't know why, but like a little before this, I was just thinking about Neuralink from Elon Musk.
Okay.
And I was like, what if Neuralink was like mandatory for all citizens? Like what? And if that were the case, what can that deprive people of besides like free will? It might not be that extreme. But
okay.
What's that movie? Is there a movie where it's like, is it Minority Report where like you cannot do bad things or something and they get flagged?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that.
Because just to expand on my little idea here.
Can't remember. Yeah.
If, let's say because of Neuralink, whoever the creators of it, the government was able to abolish all crime from this utopic society because of the Neuralink. But in doing so, that deprives people of some sort of emotion or some sort of feeling.
You're talking about the giver, in a sense. The Neuralink is a different aspect to it. But don't like in the give you remember the giver, their society bans a lot of content and media, books, and feelings and emotions and stuff like that. The worst of the world, I guess, even though, whatever. In an effort to create the most perfect society.
Ooh.
So it's like this Neuralink or something like this can be an effort for the government to create the most perfect society, but leads to societal disaster, or it is a disaster, or someone tries to reverse that.
I just thought of a spin on that. We know right now the divorce rate is 50% or something like that.
Okay. See where you're going.
So if the link deprives people of love or like the emotion of love, and they just like in some sort of giver way, they just have to be married. They get a partner selected for them, and they just stick with that partner like an arranged marriage. And I guess the reason why the government implemented this is to get rid of broken homes and single parents.
Yeah. And stabilize, have a steady supply of births.
Yeah, lead to a more... Right, exactly. Lead to a more like consistent, I guess.
They removed the feelings of like jealousy, anger, and stuff like that, either as a whole or towards their spouse or whatever. Then you have this idea of their given partners, which is very much giverish. Because I don't know if they were given partners. I think they were actually. And they're also given their babies. But they're given partners.
And then the disaster happens because...
Well, you could have someone... So you're saying there's a disaster event versus... in the beginning, versus someone comes along and we're like, we're no longer human. We're devoid of feelings and so on. We're no longer human. So it's like in an effort to humanize the population and bring back humanity in a sense.
They got rid of all feelings.
Well, that's what they did originally, and then this rebel
found a way to override the program so they could feel.
So they can feel, yeah, and feel things to the extreme that was blunted or removed or whatever. So it creates for happier, angrier, sadder, madder blissfulness that is the human condition.
Yeah, kind of interesting too if everyone was just happy because they got rid of all the negative emotions. They got rid of jealousy, anger, sadness. Like I'm just imagining it like a funeral, everyone's just smiling and just joyful because they can't feel sadness.
The same thing, you know. Oh, that's so. I feel so bad for you, and the person who's receiving it. So that the person in their family who passed or whatever.
They're like, oh, such is life.
Oh, thank you.
On.
Thank you. This is a similar idea. For the life of me, I can't remember who I was watching. Oh, damn it! Pretty much they went back in time. And okay, it was like a brother and sister. The brother was watching this old timey show, a black and white type show. And, he wasn't popular, didn't really have friends. And then he worked at like a restaurant or a diner. And his sister was more popular, had friends, and et cetera, right? So they have like the remote and they break the remote and then they both get sucked into the world on the television in the show. Or like this guy shows up and sucks them into the television or whatever. And then in that world is pretty much what, kind of what we're describing to a certain degree. It's not because of divorce rate or whatever, but it's because it's a show. And in there's really no expression. Like, I think this guy, like one of the guys ended up like having intercourse and like that's for like the first time, I think. He became like a painter, like the guy at the diner who owned the diner became like a painter. And so it was more so around like these people in their lives are living such blandness and like they don't know what it's like to be out in the rain. They don't know whatever. And then as they did this, instead of it being black and white, like they like started to return color metaphorically and literally to the people that live there. So that's what I think of when we talk about this. But the angle is it's not a TV thing. It's a divorce thing. It's a society government thing. It's
now I'm like
control.
Now I'm thinking about other things. What if the world was deprived of color and everyone was colorblind? And I think I watched some video recently of some colorblind person that was able to see color for the first time, and they were like, they broke down in tears. They were like, I never knew everything looked so beautiful.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of those videos with those kind of chromatic, something like this, glasses. I forget what they're called. But like for some people who, I don't think they're colorblind, but I think or maybe they call it color blindness, but they don't see.
There's a show with Jason Momoa called C on Apple TV.
On Apple TV, yeah.
And everyone's blind.
Yeah.
And there's one girl that could see in there. So that's kind of interesting too.
All right. Well,
what if, all right, here's one more angle I'll spit out.
Okay.
What the world was deprived of sound and everyone was like deaf. And then someone just got a hold of something so they could hear music for the first time. They don't know what music is. They hear it for the first time.
It might not even exist.
Right.
It might not even exist in the first place.
Because it all got lost somehow. I don't know.
It got lost. It was taken away.
But then they dug it up. They dug up a record player with some Drake. And they put it on. And they put it on. And they're like, what is this? Yeah, what if it's a world deprived of sound? No one can talk. They just, they type to each other maybe. Or they do sign language. And they find a way to hear again. And they hear music for the first time.
I wonder where in its entirety we can go with that.
I have seen an aspect of that in an anime before called Dr. Stone. And that was like when quickly, the premise is everyone turned to stone, and then it kind of resets to prehistoric times. So modern technology's gone. The main character figures out, he's like a genius, engineer, scientist, blah blah. So he figures out how to make like modern stuff with like primitive material. So he made a record player. Actually, he created a record player. I don't know where he got the tape from, but he was able to play music to all these people living in this new generation who don't know what music is, and they're all like fascinated and moved by it.
Yeah. I'll just throw this one out there real quick. You could be deprived of freedom. Now, what that looks like in more modern sense, or what could look like, is you have issues around trafficking. You also have just kidnapping. And I think of it, I'm like, could have a story where someone is kidnapped. It's kind of like their arc to escaping, whether they escape or not. We'll find out if we decide to go down that route. But, deprived of freedom. And then it could be for a reason, in the sense of the antagonist is doing it for money, doing it for sexual gratification in some sense or whatever. And when I say money, ransom.
We're just doing it because he's a psycho.
Or
doing it because
psycho.
Fulfillment. Yeah. Bing.
But you have to, I think you would have to do it from the person that's kidnapped perspective, because you might have moments where they're just trapped in the basement or wherever, or room or something like. I remember there was a story a while back. I mean, this happens unfortunately a lot, or happens more than we care to think. But there was a story about, I think it was two women who, they're kidnapped as teenagers or something like that, mid-teens. And they ended up I think they both ended up having a baby by the dude that kidnapped them. And pretty much the guy, had family who would come over from time to time. Like, he didn't really want people to come over that often, but he would eventually, have people come over. And these girls were upstairs in the rooms with the doors locked up. But he just put so much fear in their heart that if they had said something or in any way indicated or alerted to a guest that they were up there, he'll come and hurt them, kill them, most likely, is what he probably threatened. And then the way that they broke free, it's like a vague thing as far as my memory. But either one of them got out, something happened. One of them got out. They ran across the street. The neighbor, it was like a black dude. I remember that. And he was just like, yeah, this girl. That's how I remember the story. He was like, this white girl run up to a black dude is just weird. How, and it's just so funny. It's just like, what was he? But, whatever. That's his experience. And then they went back and got the other girl and found out that they were the girls missing for 6-7 years, maybe even longer than that, to be honest.
Right.
But that was, you have this idea of being, covered, something can be in it. Clearly a disaster hiding in it. They're being deprived of freedom, but they can, where horizon can be used in a way that can fit in. Consumer might be a little harder, but the person who kidnapped them could be a consumer at a store, let's say, buying materials to keep them in there. Maybe when they were first buying whatever they needed in order to create the environment so that they couldn't escape or whatever. I mean, it's definitely more of a drama, thriller, horror, in a sense, type story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking multiple angles off of that. The first one I had in mind was, what was it? Kidnapped. Well, maybe I'll think of it, but the most recent one in my head was, I was going to say, when you were saying so there's two things that could happen when someone gets kidnapped. Something good where it's like, I don't know if he was like in The Last Samurai, Tom Cruise. It wasn't necessarily kidnapped. He was kind of taken as a prisoner of war. But he ended up
freedom, but yeah.
He ended up like, joining the samurai side and fighting against his old buddies in the armed forces. And then if we took this back in time a bit more, I was thinking more of like, this is probably why I thought of it. So the movie Gladiator, right?
Sure, yeah.
He got taken as a slave,
yeah,
and then he fought his way to freedom. Well, the reason why I thought about that because I saw like Gladiator 2 is going to come out soon.
What?
They're making a Gladiator 2.
I know that.
But there could be like kind of some aspect of that too. I saw traits of that in a recent anime that I watched, The Dude's Village. Yeah, this is back in the Vikings time, so his village got overran by Vikings. He made it out, but he got kidnapped and sold as a slave. And the person who bought him has given him a chance to work his way to freedom. But, he has to chop down every tree in this forest and turn it into a wheat farm. So it's going to take him a while, but he has the opportunity to earn his freedom.
So, in a sense, the overall idea with Gladiator was like he had opportunity to work himself to freedom.
They both have opportunities to earn their freedom. Yeah.
That's really like the same thread here. For that idea, what time period were you talking about? Not the Gladiator time period. You're just using it as a reference, right?
Yeah, just way back then when people were still fighting with swords and then buying slaves was still a normal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the gladiators, they were slaves too.
Yeah. Where should we base? That's okay. All right. Let's pick. So we're going to do a deprived of freedom story now what kind and where slave are we talking about? So like we have the time period. Are we talking about somewhere in Europe where they're going to become a gladiator? Are we talking about a fake made up?
I think either or.
Or we can set it in another place.
We can set it in another place.
We set it.
Maybe this guy was, let's say this guy was like an invader person, the main character. And he's done a lot of invading and pillaging of villages, a lot of bad stuff since he was younger. That's all he knew. He's been part of a band of invaders or whatever time period. I don't know what that is yet. Then one day, his group or whatever gets overran and he gets sold into slavery because he's younger. He's not like an old guy, or maybe the main character isn't that. Okay, so what if that was the second co-main character? So first, there's the guy that gets sold into slavery and he's done all this bad stuff. Now he's on a farm, he's working, trying to earn his freedom, trying to make up for all the bad stuff he's done. So he's like not taking up arms anymore and stuff like that. He lets all the people bully him and stuff like that. And then a new slave comes along. He has to supervise this guy, or he's under this guy's supervision, and they're kind of working together to earn their freedom. And maybe there comes a time when they have to take up arms, and our main character has to get this other slave to kind of bring back his old self in order to save everything, to avoid disaster.
So what I would add to that is, even though he's trying to save everything and become our hero, if he gets caught, because you could say that he's a slave under law, right? So because of the bad things he did, it's like the options are slavery for X amount of years. We can make it like some long distance thing, death, jail. Well, if we remove this and just say, okay, it's either this, slavery, or death, and then it's like, all right, he's forced to now take up arms to protect whatever. If he gets recaptured, it spells death for him. The stakes are, by picking up the sword, so to speak, the stakes are his life.
Yeah, to make things even more interesting, maybe his slave owner is the nice person, right? He's letting his workers the opportunity, giving his workers the opportunity to earn their freedom. And maybe he just has obviously he's very wealthy, he owns all his farmland. And maybe he has a just douchebag of a son that doesn't want to work hard to take over the farm and would rather gain it in other means, like maybe slaying his dad. And now it's up to our characters to...
Okay, I got it. The son wants to take over. Instead of a farm, it's more than that. Okay, I got it. So the father owns, a whole, land, right? Like this whole villa, whole whatever.
Yep.
Right? And the son wants to take over, his father's riches faster, or now. He slays his father and inherits the land. And you could say, and this gets very gladiator-ish, but you could say the older slave either wants to revenge the father, his former master, in a sense, that's what it is, and get the son, or he runs away because he doesn't want to be underneath the rule of this crazy son, and he sends his goons to go after and ends his life.
So the son is purging everybody.
Only those who disobey.
Clean the slate.
Only those who disobey. And since he wants to run away, it's about to catch a blade.
Okay, so
because maybe underneath the rule of the son, anyways, it still spells death. Maybe the older slave realizes that it's like, I'm going to die regardless. Might as well take the chances on trying to live free.
Right. So he has to revisit his old savage self to save himself and get rid of the son. This is kind of like his, not really redemption, but he, I guess, uses his talents, per se, for good now.
I mean, there could be some redemption in there. It depends on what he did. You know what I mean? But I think we should go with the idea.
Okay.
And see what happens. We have about 1 hour left.
Depending on what he did. No, he should definitely be a bad person. He must have done such bad things that he's just against taking up any arms.
Hey, he said never again.
Now he's forced in a corner, in a cupboard, to take up arms. And he makes a dash for the horizon.
Yeah, do we have a location?
Somewhere in Europe.
Okay.
I think that makes sense. His origin or ethnicity, I don't know yet. Let's pull out a European random name generator.
I put in Roman. Because why not?
Could be Roman. All right. I'm going to put Norwegian. I'm just pick random ones. Polish, Romanian, and Irish.
Cyrus.
Atticus. Thomas. Eden. Stefan.
Hades.
Callum. Hugo. Jarl. Oscar. Magnus.
I know what
Magnus Carlsen, the chess player.
We can go with Magnus.
Magnus. Strong name.
What did Magnus do? Magnus killed a whole school's worth of children. That might just get him death on the spot.
Magnus used to be in a company of raiders that have slaughtered many villages of innocent people.
Well, we can blunt it a little bit. So it's like raiders, yeah, they stole and pillaged and did hit crimes or hits on behalf of
the kingdom
or nobles who had the money to pay for these hits. So it's not, you can make an argument that maybe the hits were against folks that were not the greatest, but at least it gives us a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to his punishment.
That leads to some interesting possibilities on why he got sold as a slave. Could it be
maybe he
either could get captured by the enemy,
right? Yeah,
or maybe he just betrayed his own people and they sold him. They captured him.
So maybe in their guild, to go against the guild, spells your demise, spells disaster. For you at least. And so they sold him off.
Yeah.
Or, if you want to make a revenge story here, he goes against the guild. They deprive him of his freedom. They put him in a jail or some kind of holding or banishment or whatever. And he comes back. Okay. He has a woman, his wife or whatever. They slaughter her. They slaughter his kids. All because he decides to leave this guild or whatever, right? Or go against them in some way. So they slaughter the people he loves the most. They remove his freedom and cast him, and send him out, right? So they put him in chains, send him out. He's going to be a slave, some far destination. And, we get beyond the ship, we can see the horizons, blah, blah. And then he has to come, it's a revenge, so he's going to come back and come get all the people involved who did this to him. So instead of him leaving about this whole master and son thing, it's not about that. It's a revenge. And he can either do it tactfully, or he can just be straight barbaric. But either way, it could be interesting. And him coming back and wreaking revenge and or messing up the lives. It doesn't have to be murder. Maybe he tortures them in a sense, sabotages them, their lives, their loved ones, or whatever. Or maybe not their loved ones, but sabotage could be relationships, sabotage, or financial. And then, he's just trying to ruin them and then kill them. He wants to extract torture and punishment.
So how does he escape slavery?
We'll figure that one out. Maybe he just runs off. I don't know. Or someone comes in that's able to help him, get back to home. And some years passed. His hair's grown out or whatever. I don't know. He looks different. They don't recognize him.
Okay, so how about I'm thinking about ways that he could betray his own people.
It doesn't have to be him betraying his own people. Oh, you mean, like he goes against the guild?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's just one. Maybe he's part of like a unit that on behalf of the kingdom, he goes out to neighboring, villages in the country to kind of keep them in control and collect taxes, whatever, kind of keep them in line. He develops a love with a woman from a village, one of these villages, and she ain't going to be in here for very long because the kingdom orders a hit on the village. They're going to go and destroy it. Maybe the leader of that village ain't cooperating.
Okay.
Or something. So he doesn't know what's happening maybe, and he just shows up one day hoping to see his woman, and then houses are on fire. People are getting shanked.
Well, his own house and his community.
Maybe he's like developing a relationship with this girl, and they're finally taking it serious. And then he comes to a burning village. Everyone's getting slaughtered. She's about to get slaughtered, and he makes that decision right there to kill one of his guys, protects her. It amounts to
like that. He can have his own people, his own loved ones in his place where the guild was also set up, right? And then they go off to do this thing. He's having second doubts about being in this now that he's, Love has a daughter or whatever, right? He's having second thoughts. One of the dudes in his guild, right, he's out there with, is about to kill an innocent person, maybe a little girl, just to make it more dramatic. And he's trying to stop him. The guy's like, for whatever reason, he's just like, no, we're going to kill everyone in this village. And Magnus ends up killing him. And so it's not because of like his own person, but it's just like he was having, second thoughts about this whole thing because his heart, he's had a change. He's starting to have a change of heart. Then he's forced to have this change of heart. But he ends up saving this little girl. Or maybe he doesn't, but it's in the act of trying to save this little unknown girl, the innocence, trying to save the innocence. For saving one, he loses two. His two own. And then, but he ended up killing one of the members, which obviously is, no. So, and it could be like a junior member. So that way, like, why wouldn't they just kill him? It could be like a newbie where it's like, all right, it's still against the guild, but like, we don't know this dude that well anyway.
Well, it could be like against a psycho member that's just like killing people.
Well, we just need to make sure the guild doesn't feel like, you know what? This dude was so important that it demands your death. It's like, that guy, we just need to send a message that no one can go around doing this. But like that guy, if there's ever a guy to kill, you can kill him.
It's some guy that's just on the same status as them. And maybe the guy's just a little psycho, a little sicko that just likes killing people. So obviously they overtook this village, and for whatever reason, he wanted to end this little girl's life, even though they were ordered not to. Maybe they were ordered to take all the women and children alive. And this guy wanted to be more sadistic, and Magnus slays him.
Yeah.
And then all the members of his raiding party beat and batter him and capture him and sell him off to the slavery. Or maybe you said they destroy his home, right? First?
Yeah, I think it's Magnus thinks he can explain the situation to the guild leaders or whatever. He's, in their court and they haul him in. He begins to explain, and they bring in his wife and daughter and kill them
in front of him. Oh no!
Then, they banish him and tell him, death is too easy for him. He will become a slave for the rest of his life.
For whatever reason, I feel like this makes sense in like Japan, and like, I mean, you could still be named Magnus.
The funny thing is, originally I was maybe we do it in Japan or something.
This does make sense on what a shogun would do to like the samurai. I feel like that's what they were doing.
Was it? Maybe, I don't know, but it can be. They're all dead, so we can make it whatever we want.
All right, so Japan, Magnus the Samurai.
So we gotta change that name. We're also down to 43 minutes, but I'm just gonna
doesn't need to change the name.
There's Kano.
Give me Magnus the Samurai.
Nah, you can't have that. Yeah, what was the name of that dude? Hans? Is that the dude from Fast and the Furious?
Hans, yeah.
It's about to be Hans, bro.
All right, Hans. So Hans and his warlord party The Samurai Warlord Party.
Yeah.
Just finished.
So Hans is out on a mission.
What's the opposite of liberating? Like
to entrap, to capture, to...
Because he ain't liberating them. He's capturing them. Antonym. Imprison.
Enslave.
All right. Yeah.
They're there to, like, enslave. So Hans and his
Samurai Warlord Party are enslaving a village. Or they just finished enslaving a village.
It's like the worst thing. We're like laughing. We're like, yeah, they're enslaving a village.
It's fiction. It's fiction, everybody. All the women and children are being taken. The men are being killed.
Ah, man. Some men are being killed.
Some men are being killed.
And some are being enslaved for them. Some men are being killed.
Hans comes across...
are becoming slaves.
Hans comes across his fellow samurai who is telling a little girl to move. Maybe this little girl's trying to protect her wounded dad. She ain't moving. So now he's drawing his sword. He's like, okay.
Little girl refuses to move away from her injured father. You know, he could have also been a samurai. You know, he got injured in the fight, in the battle.
Yep.
She grabs her father's knife,
katana,
and holds it up as a way to challenge or, you know, deter the, you know, bad samurai. I mean, yeah. They were all kind of bad in their own right to a certain degree anyway.
Yep. Samurai guy laughs. He says, you know what happens.
He laughs.
Draw a sword. Don't you, little girl?
Huh? Sword. He releases his katana from... I'm trying to remember what you call it.
It's just in my... I was going to say unsheath his katana from his...
What? What is that thing called?
I don't know.
It doesn't start with an S.
Sword holder. Scabbard.
It is a scabbard. But it's not that. It can't be.
Sword cover?
The sheath?
Well, it says the katana holder name is technically called a saya. A-Y-A. But it's a scabbard. That's just...
All right. Well, scabbard in a time.
Saya. S-A-Y-A.
And is about to plunge it into this little girl.
But it gets stopped by another sword. Hans's sword.
Hans blocks the blow. What are you doing?
We're supposed to take women and children alive.
Goes back. She is just a child. Out of my way. What happened?
Out of my way.
The samurai said. She's going to learn the hard way.
He's going to learn why the sword is only meant for men.
The samurai moves around Hans and chases the little girl. He gets her cornered and is about to kill her on the spot when Hans...
Oh, wait. There might be... Because there's a wounded dad there, right? So maybe the samurai guy tries to chase the little girl.
Yeah.
The father grabs him. He just turns around and...
cuts off his arm.
Just kills the father. Little girl gets angry. Runs at the samurai guy and stabs him in the leg or something. Now he's extra pissed. And what we do from here maybe successfully kills her, or tries to kill her again and gets in a scuffle with Hans, and that's what leads to his death.
Her father grabs him. Right. Looks down and decapitates him
with one swing.
The little girl pounces, digging her knife into his back. The samurai swings and misses as the little girl runs away, leaving the sword or knife or whatever in his back. Samurai removes the knife and chases the little girl. Gets her corner and is about to kill a spot when Hans chops
his arm
off his head. You know what? It may make more sense just to injure him. It was not like he killed him, but then, his clan takes it as, okay, he didn't kill him, but he gave him this blow, where he can't fight the same. And so now he
cuts off his arm.
Yeah. So Hans chops off his arm. Other guild or, clan members run over and arrest Hans. The little girl escapes with her life. I had to do some jumping.
I feel like she needs to come back in the story somehow. I don't know if we have time to incorporate her, but
years later she might come back and be out here just. But yeah, maybe about 32 minutes. The little girl escapes with her life. Hans is hauled into
samurai court.
Yeah. Samurai court. He begins to explain why he cut off the other member of his arm. They tell him he should be put to death, but they have a better idea.
Oh, what if they give him an option?
What kind of commit?
So you can commit seppuku, which is what those samurai guys did.
Yeah, so he offs himself, potentially. Or short story.
Or he gets sent into slavery. Maybe he gets that option after they murder his family.
Then it makes him a coward. Because wouldn't he want to join his family?
No, because he wants revenge.
Maybe.
His revenge for blood.
Maybe.
Supersedes him wanting to join.
How about this? For the sake of this, he doesn't get an option. They have a better idea. They haul in his wife and child, kill them on the spot.
Dave's got a dark mind, everybody.
No.
Remember.
Have him off himself,
I'm just trying to, incorporate accurate historical references. Haul on his family and murder his family in front of him.
So what you're saying? All right, so they haul him in, they kill them, and then they give him an option to join them in death or become a slave.
Yeah.
All right. So the leaders of the clan tell Mr. wants to be accurate here. Tells him he can join his family in death or become a slave till his death.
Or live his life as a slave.
Hans, in the middle of his grief, steps towards the leaders in a threatening manner, but he is stopped. He decides slavery will be his fate. Obviously, with the mindset that he's going to extract revenge. All right. Han's on the back of a
horse-drawn carriage thing, being taken to a boat, being sent.
Taken to a boat and shipped to Korea.
To Korea.
I don't know.
And shipped to another land, another Japanese island. I don't know.
Nah, they remove him from Japan.
Oh, they remove him from Japan.
He has to keep going, come back.
You know what's interesting? What if he goes to Europe? And he's like the only Asian guy there.
Goes there and becomes a gladiator. So, he's shipped to
or,
Guam.
Or, the ship can wreck in a storm and he, survives and washes up on shore and starts to make his way back.
I think part of the story needs to be his enslavement and the horrors of that. However, there's a lot of terrible disasters that can happen from this shipwreck. But my thing is, okay, the shipwreck happens, he survives that disaster. He gets to wherever he is. And, he's not known. They don't know he's a slave, most likely, unless we want to somehow make that part of it. And then it's like he can return right away.
Yeah, or he gets...
I think he's become a slave and work the fields.
He gets enslaved, and maybe he leads a rebellion to free themselves.
Or maybe on the ship he tries to lead a rebellion. He attempts to lead one, and then gets... it gets stopped. It doesn't mean to kind of give up. So where is he being shipped to? Korea? He'll be shipped to Korea for now. It's okay.
Whatever. Another Asian country.
Boat and shipped to Korea. While on the ship, Hans
tries to escape. Tries to jump overboard.
Plan for escape. He tries to attack at night to get back to Japan. His plan is stopped when a deckhand
knocks him out.
Sees him trying to remove his chains or whatever. Or, they sees him trying to access the captain's quarters. He's trying to kill him. They place him in higher security or place him 24-hour watch where they just kind of take turns watching him. All right. He arrives in this unfamiliar land where he doesn't understand the language or customs. Man's isolated. Right? They bring him
to an auction. He gets bought by a landowner
to work the field,
rice fields.
He tries to escape again, but they could harm him in some way to keep him under control. They just literally beat him.
They just whip him.
Yeah.
Every time he tries to escape.
Was beaten badly. They tried to break his spirit. I mean, this guy's a fighter, man. This man comes from, in his own rights. He knows how to really fight. But, whatever, right? Day after day, he works away in the fields. But at night, he practices his skills. He attempts about 22 minutes. He attempts more, escapes, each time is found or tracked down and is beaten.
Maybe what's the equivalent to digging a tunnel in a prison cell and escaping of what he could do? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he hides in a barrel or something of cargo and they ship him out.
Well, what we could have is someone gets bought and sent to this thing and they speak, Japanese. It could also be one of those things where over time he learns the language too.
Yeah.
But he could befriend someone that in some way helps him escape. In some way. It could be another slave. It could be someone who's not a slave.
What about
takes pity on him or whatever, or realizes, they realize the skills that he has, they could actually use it for their benefit out of the field.
That's where I was getting at, because maybe this landowner, he has a son. Going back to the son thing, he wants the son to take over the farm, but the son wants to be a warrior. But the son obviously no one's going to teach him how to sword fight. But this guy knows how to sword fight. So maybe they kind of do a compromise here where the son helps. Huh?
Where he has to train him?
Yeah, and the son helps him escape somehow.
Yeah. Or maybe at this rice farm, this is kind of a crazy-ass idea, but I'll say it. They keep getting attacked. So they use Hans and they ask him to train all the rest of the slaves. But this is a bad idea because then it's like you train all your slaves to be damn near master swordsmen. They're going to come get you. So that's why
I feel like these farms, on the anime I watch, they have bodyguards. And maybe the bodyguards just aren't good at fighting.
Maybe they're going through so many bodyguards because they're just not great.
And so Hans trains them. Maybe becomes that.
I mean, we could throw it in there.
Becomes head bodyguard and earns his freedom. I don't know.
One day, a bodyguard catches Hans
swinging a wooden stick.
Yeah, his sword skills with a wooden stick. The guard
and he tests them.
Well,
he tests them.
Watches from afar and realizes he has some skill. He interrupts him and then tests him. He interrupts him and picks up a stick to challenge him.
I was going to say he throws him a real sword.
Now, that is just not a smart thing to do as a guard.
We could make this even more historically accurate. Ninjas attack the farm. You know how ninjas and samurai are always fighting each other?
Oh, I see. But do they have ninjas in Korea?
I don't know, probably.
Yeah,
Assassin.
Their version of assassins. All right, so the guard watches from afar. He realizes he has some skill. He interrupts him and picks up a stick to challenge him. They duel.
They start sword fighting.
The guard realizes he's better than him. He asks
who are you?
Yeah, he asks who he is and tells him the truth. In shock, the guard tells him he should kill him. Too dangerous.
Yeah.
Asks if he can train him, make him better. Hans thinks about this, but realizes this may be his way to freedom. At the very least, gets him out of the rice fields. Okay. So we're at about 16 minutes. So I think your idea is actually, very good. So we can kind of do some jumping and incorporate it where it's like, okay, Hans trains all the guards. over time. So it's something like over time, Hans trains all of the guards, becomes well respected.
Yeah.
He tells the master or whatever, the owner tells the owner he wishes to have his freedom. The owner, I don't know. Does the owner say maybe? Does the owner say no? But then I was thinking of whatever that so they have their little thing, their little conversation. Then one day these assassins come in trying to get the owner. He's a powerful man, and then the owner is like, "You saved my life."
Or maybe that conversation happens after.
I'll give you your life, in a sense.
Maybe that conversation happens after. Like assassins just randomly attack.
All right. So over time, Hans trains all the guards and becomes well respected. One day,
assassins attack the farm.
Kevin attacked the farm.
Dave leads the attack. Dave puts on his best ninja suit.
Attack.
Starts throwing stars
on the farm. The assassins are after the owner, but kill off
the bodyguards,
slaves, and some of the bodyguards. The, I guess, newly trained bodyguards are able to repel some of the attacks. The best assassin sneaks their way into the house and is about to stealth kill the owner when Hans comes out of nowhere and kills the killer, the assassin. Okay. The farm wins and the farm wins and everything goes back to normal in a sense. But whatever. All right. So Hans tells the owner he wishes to have his freedom. The owner says he never freed a slave before, but he saved his life and thinks it's just to give him his freedom. Hans is a free boy.
Yeah, I'm writing ahead, like really broad stuff.
Yeah, do it, man.
Maybe you can.
Where are you writing up to until he gets? Are you writing after he gets back to Japan?
Okay, so this is what I got so far. That doesn't have any detail. Just general. He's granted his freedom, just like you said, and he starts to make his journey back to Japan, and makes his way back to his homeland. At this point, he's unrecognizable. He's in Korean attire, whatever that looks like. He's got longer hair, beard, whatever. And he starts to recognize some of his old crew in the town, just prancing around and stuff. Now he starts to make plans to pick them off. I had one where the guy's in a hot spring bath, and Hans gets him there. Maybe he gets another guy who's like drinking with a bunch of women, picks him off there.
All right. So you got from when he gets his freedom to when he gets back home, and then when he starts to pick off some. So we just got. So what we're gonna do is skip ahead. So all right, he's picking off some. Okay. At the end of the day, in order to really make the story feel complete, he has to get the main.
He has to kill the Shogun.
The Shogun, yeah. All right. So
he has to show up at the Shogun's house.
Hans is invited, some way, somehow, to the Shogun's house.
Or he just shows up like a ninja in the middle of the night.
It's more sweeter if he's invited. It's like the man invited his own death.
What does he get invited for? That's the thing.
I don't know. What cool thing. Because Hans, they all think he's Korean.
Maybe Hans poses as some like Korean trader, and he's trying to Korean merchant, and he's trying to do some business.
He wants to buy some slaves. He wants to buy some land, slaves,
or buy some land off the Shogun and bring like some bring an opium farm.
I think he's gonna do the ploy of he wants to buy a bunch of slaves. He's a wealthy Korean. He wants to buy a bunch of slaves. He wanted to come in person so he can personally inspect.
He represents his client, whatever is, and he's just representing. So he's come here and he's
invited to the Shogun's house as a representative. I mean, this is all fake. He made up the story, but as a representative to a wealthy Korean family,
businessman
looking slaves for their newly bought land.
You know what? I think. All right. Never mind. Let's keep going. Now I'm starting to think this should happen before he starts killing off the members. So they kind of know him.
Yeah.
And then he reveals himself as he kills them.
That would be pretty cool. I mean, everyone's watching us do this as a draft, and that's part of the cool thing about it is that like it's not meant to be perfect, but that's definitely the arrangement. I mean, maybe we could do the arrangement as we're talking about it, as long as we keep it in mind.
Yeah. I think he gets invited there first, and then, they all get to know him as some, like, rich guy.
Well, yeah, so Hans, we get him in Japan. He goes there underneath the ploy of him being what we just said, representing the family.
Yeah.
Right? And then, he's invited, and they invite him, talks. He's talking about this. The clan gets to know the new Hans, even though his name's not Hans.
And they want to treat him right? Because they want to do business.
That's right.
We got to treat our honored guest.
They were ordered to treat our guest
of honor.
Honored guests. And then we have those killings. And I'll just say Hans knocks all clan members one at a time, revealing his true identity, watching the horror in their eyes as he lobs off their heads. All right, so we gotta get to that part where he gets the Shogun.
Of course. Maybe this is his quote unquote last day there, where he has to make his selection.
Yeah, it's the day of slave selection. Oh, and he sees they didn't even know who she was, but he sees that they recaptured that girl that he saved many years prior.
Ooh, okay.
Hans sees the girl he saved many years prior as a slave.
Or is she working as a servant already in the Shogun's house?
She's a slave. She could be a servant. Maybe he uses her to access the Shogun's home. He can walk freely, but she might have keys to certain areas or whatever. Access.
They didn't have keys. Did they have keys back then? Maybe she opens the sliding door.
There's just been keys. They were just simple as keys. But Hans sees the girl he saved many years prior as a slave. We'll work that in some way, but let's just say, Hans wakes up. How we want to do this? I'm thinking he wakes up the Shogun from sleep. Wakes up the Shogun.
He wakes up the Shogun from his sleep. He escorts the Shogun to a room where he has already tied up the Shogun's wife and children.
This man's getting dark.
Now, how dark are we going to get now?
He has to be better than him. He can't kill him. Maybe he kills the Shogun in front of him. He tells the wife what the Shogun did many years ago to his family. Right? He's inducing fear in their hearts that he'll do it to them. He takes a knife and slices off the arm of the Shogun. He's gonna let him. He extracts 3 minutes. Extracts his revenge, bit by bit, until the Shogun is nothing more than blood and tissue. Boy, did the gruesome. The Shogun's clan comes running in and see the horror before them. They instantly attack, and Hans fights them, but ultimately loses. He wasn't interested in running. He dies. Then, now,
or maybe he gets dealt a fatal blow. He's bleeding out. He escapes the Shogun's manor with the girl, and then he just dies in front of her, saying, like, now I get to... now I've avenged my family.
To tie in this girl properly, like, the way I see it, if we have more time or another draft, like, this girl needs to be tied in way better. And then, but also, like, the way we go about this clan's demise and then the Shogun's death can be sharpened.
He burns it down. The manor.
I feel like in one version of the story, he should burn down the manor with him in it. Because don't forget, he was once a part of them. It's like ending the cycle almost.
That's true.
Yeah.
Or maybe the little girl's telling him to escape with her, and he's like, no, you go.
You know, he kind of sort of deserves this.
Yeah, because plus he's going to die anyway.
I'm going to add in this fire. About 1 minute. Hans, you got to add in the cupboard scene somewhere in Consumer. Well, okay. Well, Consumer is like the owner. He's a consumer. He's a
consumer.
Disaster is all of this. So really, in Horizon, we can tie that to the boat sequence so he can see the horizon.
Yep.
The cupboard. 42 seconds. Hans hits the lantern on the wall, and the house becomes engulfed in flames. The girl he saved tells him to run with her, but Hans declines this because he knows he deserves this death as well.
All right, I got it covered. It's in the very beginning. We'll just stash it there.
All right. Were you able to hear the thing go off?
No.
All right. It just went off.
Whew.
That was a tight one. This is actually a pretty good story. It needs a whole bunch of tightening up and details, but...
Dude, I started coming up with lines that could make this more interesting as it went on. I was like...
With enough work and detailed work and all this stuff, and tying in some of these themes and these kind of storylines that we were going, it could really be a proper story.
Because, like, one of the other things I was like, all right, instead of becoming a slave, and let's say he shipwrecks and washes across, like, Korean shores.
Yeah.
Maybe he starts becoming a personal bodyguard to someone very rich.
That's interesting. That's an interesting aspect.
And somehow he just earns enough money to head back.
Yeah.
Whatever adventures those two might go to.
Yeah, yeah.
And then exacts his revenge. They're not under the guise of a merchant this time, but actually as a
go back to
as an assassin.
The assassin. Yeah, that's not a bad path either.
There was another path I thought of too, but then I forgot. But
well, the path I think with this younger girl, or just like girl he saves or whatever, could go in its own like little thing. But you know, I put this little idea where it's like, yeah, they're treated as an honored guest, but like he's lobbing off their heads bit by one and whatnot. And I think there could be like how he goes about doing that could be very detailed. But
some detail.
That's what I was going to say is that the whole like, you know, there's also some detail needs to be details around like why. So he gets there, they don't do the slave inspection that same day, like they do it later. So like, why is that? And it's like he comes back on that day. He sees a girl. Does he see the girl before that main day of the selection? Maybe he sees her the same day he goes there just to introduce himself properly.
Yeah.
And that might open up other possibilities to accessing the Shogun, you know? Like, that actually might work really well in, like, your version, the other version of the one that you just brought up of, like, you know, he goes there and he sees her somewhere, somehow. Maybe she's allowed to go to the market or something like this, and he sees her and talks to her, finds out that she's a servant at this place now, and that opens some doors, you know?
Yeah.
So, interesting story.
Interesting.
This one was a bit harder to get out, or at least to get started. Because we started off on something completely different.
Yeah.
Like, we were spitballing the ideas. It was on something completely different. And now it's like, but it still ended up with an idea that's actually decent. Like, it's a good idea. And it has multiple avenues it could take in order to make it better. So.
Right, exactly.
It's not a bad draft.
Not at all. All right, so which parts do you want to do?
Oh boy, that's the hardest part. I think we just might have to free range it. So like the beginning, I added some stuff about the beginning that.
All right, so if you're gonna do the beginning,
I think I'll say, but I have a part where I put your name in caps because once we get out of Korea, I'm like, there's a section there that's missing for me. All
right, so you want to do the beginning?
And you do the bottom
up to when he goes back. Once he gets to Korea, you said
I can go all the way up to, or I can go up to confidently to where he gets his freedom in Korea.
Where he gets his freedom.
So the owner says, he saved him, whatever. He's gonna get his freedom, and then you had that passage part where he goes back, and then we just rearrange how Hans is invited to the Shogun's place. The only other thing, so all that stuff you have, I believe, the only other thing that's probably a little bit different in my section that you already talked about, but I don't know if you wrote it down because we were running out of time, was just the idea of him engulfing the property in fire and him staying there.
Okay.
But I think, I mean, you can add that in. That's not a big lift there.
Yeah. All right. So if you do all the way up to he gets his freedom, I could finish it.
Okay.
I will say
Perfect.
in the beginning to incorporate cupboard, you have the little girl hide in the cupboard when she gets when the father stops her.
Yeah.
When the father stops the samurai and she runs away, she's hiding in a cupboard with her knife, and she just pops out and stabs the dude. She he's looking for her, and she pops out and tries to ambush him, stabs in the back.
Okay. All right. Got the cupboard. And then I was just gonna, I said something about Horizon on the boat.
Yep.
All right, cool. And so that's covered. Horizon already said consumer. It's just more so the idea of being consumer, just because
he's going to be a consumer. He's trying to buy slaves. He's
exactly we don't have to say he's a consumer. He's just buying slaves. That's what a consumer does.
Yeah.
Well, not buy slaves, but buy something.
Well, he also gets bought too.
Yeah.
As a slave. So.
And the whole thing is kind of a disaster. I mean, the whole thing is a disaster for him. But the disaster of losing his kids and they deprive freedom. So, yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah.
All right. You ready? I'm ready to begin.
All right. Let me make one note.
Make a little note.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to go over this story just to recap. The words we were given were horizon, consumer, cupboard, disaster, deprivation. We have creative ways to incorporate consumer and deprivation in cupboard and horizon. And we're just going to start the story from the very top. Mr. Dave, why don't you kick us off?
All right. Our main character, Hans, is a part of a warlord samurai clan, where they pillage, plumage, and take what they can from other territories and other samurai clans. Back in the times where samurais were taken from each other, Hans and his party, his clan, reach a village where they have finished enslaving and rounding up most of the women and children. They're doing their patrols of killing off certain men, older men who are no good use to them, and killing off any men who's still trying to fight them, and enslaving those men that they think that they can use on the markets as slaves to sell or for themselves. As this is happening, one of Hans's fellow samurai clansmen is trying to kill off an injured man who was a fighter, who was another samurai in the middle of the battle. He's trying to finish him off. But what's standing in his way is a little 4-foot girl who's trying to block off her father. This samurai is not necessarily trying to kill her, but his patience is starting to wear thin. Hans happens upon the scene and watches. The little girl keeps on refusing to move. The samurai goes for her arm and tries to pull her away. She snatches it back, covering her father, and when she turns around, she's holding between them the knife from her father. The samurai, confused, looks down at this little girl. Is she really trying to challenge him? He laughs. She should know better. She should know what happens when you draw a sword against a samurai. That samurai releases his katana from the scabbard. He points it at her, tells her to move again. She refuses. This little girl's brave. She's about to plunge it, or she's about to swing it at the little girl, when Hans steps in and blocks the blow. What are you doing? He asks. You know she's just a child. She's of no real harm. Samurai has now lost his patience and is angry. Out of my way, he says. She's going to have to learn the hard way. The samurai moves around Hans and is about to get the little girl, but she backs up. As he tries to swing again, her father, wounded on the ground, grabs at the samurai. He looks down at her father, pitiful, he thinks, and decapitates him around the spot. The little girl, at this moment of anger and sadness, pounces on top of him and digs her knife into his back. Samurai lunges up as he shouts at the shooting pain in his back. She leaves the knife in his back and runs away to go hide. The samurai removes the knife and begins to search for this little girl. At this point, so angry, he just wants revenge. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about saving her. He steps into the house that he saw her walk into and searches it underneath the bed, around every corner, in every room. He gets to the kitchen area and opens up the cupboard, and there she is, cornered in there. It's perfect for him. He's about to kill her right there on the spot and put his sword right through her head when Hans chops off his arm. The other clan members hear the scream of the samurai as he shouts out his arm. They come in quickly into the house to see what has gone on and what person of this other clan has managed to cut off the arm of one of their own. But to their surprise and their horror, they see their own, Hans, standing there with his katana blade bloodied by this man's arm. The little girl, in all this unrest, manages to escape as the attention has been focused onto Hans. They shout, Hans, what have you done? This can get you killed. Hans tries to explain that he has lost his temper and was going to kill a little girl unnecessarily. They arrest Hans and tell him not to fight or resist, or else they will kill him on the spot. And Hans submits. Hans is brought in front of the shogun. He's in the middle of samurai court. He explains the rationale behind needing to take action against one of his own brethren. The shogun looks at him, barely making any discernible emotion. Eventually, the shogun tells him that he should be put to death, but in this case, he has a better idea. The door on the side swings open and some screaming and footsteps are heard. To Hans's horror, his wife and child are brought in. Hans is trying to make out what on earth does the shogun have in mind. They tell his wife and child to kneel, and they do, out of fear, and Hans is still trying to work out. And as Hans is about to tell the shogun to not enslave his family, the two clansmen chop off the heads of both family members. Hans is stunned. There's no way he would have seen this coming. The shogun, tells him at this point he can join his family in death or become a slave for the rest of his days. Hans barely hears him. In the middle of his grief, he steps towards the shogun in a manner that's considered threatening, and two of the other clansmen who just decapitated both his wife and his child step towards him with their blades drawn. Hans, with no blade, no way of defending or attacking, stands down and decides he'll accept his fate as a slave. At that very instant, he's put in chains and is hauled off via horse in a carriage. He's taken to a port, put on a boat, and is being shipped to God knows where. He watches his beloved Japan slip into the horizon as they sail further and further away from his home, away from his family. While on the ship, Hans devises some plans to escape and get back to Japan in order to carry out an attack on the shogun and everyone in the clan as revenge for his family. Hans slips his chains and tries to gain access to the captain's quarters in order to put an end to the captain and turn the ship back around. However, a deckhand sees him in the middle of the night and hits him over the head, knocking him out. For the remainder of this trip, he's put on 24-hour watch with guards coming and going, watching his every move. They finally reach this new place, this unfamiliar land, a land where he doesn't understand the language or the customs. This land is Korea. They bring Hans and the rest of the slaves on the ship to auction. Hans, as a great physical specimen, is bought on the spot and bought to work in the rice fields. As the days and the months and the years go by, Hans tries to escape every now and again, but is beaten badly for his attempts. It begins to break his spirit, but every time he begins to lose hope, he thinks about his wife and his child, and it keeps the flame lit in his heart that one day he will avenge their deaths. As he works by day in the fields, at night he practices his skills, honing them, sharpening them, maintaining them. One day, as he's practicing his skills with a wooden stick, a bodyguard so happens to be watching him from afar. Hans is unaware that the bodyguard has found him. Hans moves with swiftness and skill, that much higher of the bodyguard or any of the bodyguards. Finally, the guard steps out from his hiding position and interrupts. Hans doesn't know what to do. Is he about to get his head cut off or practicing his skill or what? He readies himself to run. Instead, the bodyguard picks up a stick, brings it up, and places it in front of Hans. Hans realizes that he's being challenged. They fight back and forth. The guard's testing his skills. The guard soon realizes that Hans' skill is way better than his own. He tells him He should be killed. He's too dangerous, but if he promises not to take up arms against him or any of the other guards, he will let him live. Hans nods his head. The guard tells him he has another request of him. Hans awaits this request, fearing the worst. The bodyguard asks Hans if he can help train him to make him better. Hans thinks it's such a strange and weird request, but obliges it because maybe it'll help him obtain his freedom faster. At the very least, it'll get him out of the rice fields. Hans begins to train this guard, and the guard, they build up a trust with Hans, and Hans begins to train all the other guards at this home, on this land. He becomes well respected, but he has not gotten his freedom. Then one day, a clan decides to attack the farm. They're really assassins looking to get the owner. The leader of this clan is Kevin. And as the rest of these assassins are going after bodyguards, and the bodyguards are fighting back and succeeding to a certain degree, one of the assassins, the head assassin, breaks off and sneaks his way into the house because the main objective is to kill the owner. As the assassin is about to stealth kill the owner, Hans comes out of nowhere and kills off the assassin, saving the life of the owner. Hans and the owner talk. The owner thanks Hans for saving his life, and for his loyalty, he'll be upgraded for his living and quality of food. But Hans sees this opportunity as another way for him to obtain what he's been wanting ever since he's left Japan, his freedom. He expresses his wish to have his freedom from the owner. The owner thinks it through and tells him he's never freed a slave before. But then again, he's never been in the circumstance where he was saved by a slave before. The owner grants Hans his freedom and thanks him again for saving his life. All right, that's what I got.
Hans is given a bit of money from the owner to go about his ways. Hans starts making his way towards the Korean farmer's market, just to purchase some goods, because he plans on going back to Japan to exact his revenge. He comes across some fancy attire, and he purchases it from the tailor. The tailor tells him, he asks the tailor for some directions, on how to get back to Japan, which boat he should take. The tailor tells him to take a certain path, but to be wary, because there's dangers lurking in that path. Hans has no idea what he's talking about, so he thanks the tailor, and he makes his way on the path towards the boat, towards the harbor. While on the path, Han hears some hissing. What could that be? He looks over, and just camouflaged within the field is a snake. He's staring eye to eye with this snake, and it's a pit viper, the most poisonous snake in Korea. Han unsheaths his sword. He does a swing, and the next scene, we see him at the harbor, on the boat, on his way back to Japan. He's now in his attire. He's wearing this fancy attire. His plan is to put on a guise, to go to Japan under the guise of a representative working on behalf of a very wealthy Korean merchant. So when he gets to his hometown in Japan, he makes his way to the shogun's manor. He gets stopped at the front gate by two bodyguards asking him, what does he want? Foreigner. Han says, I wish to request a meeting with the shogun. I have business to do. I represent a very wealthy from Korea, and we would like to do some business. I would like to see your wares. One of the bodyguards says, stay here, one moment, please. He walks into the shogun's manor. Several minutes later, he walks back out and says, the shogun is ready to see you. Hans enters the shogun's manor, enters the house. He sees other bodyguards inside the house, drinking, having fun, and he sees out the corner of the eye the two bodyguards who executed his wife and child back in the day. Immediately, his blood boils, but he has to keep on a poker face because he knows they have what's coming to him. So he sees the shogun, explains why he's here, and his client from Korea wishes to purchase several slaves, possibly some land, to invest in a farm here, and wanted to know if that would be possible with the shogun's permission. The shogun says, of course, let me think about it, but for time being, please enjoy Japan. I'll make sure you're being well taken care of, and we could talk business on a certain day. So he tells his bodyguards to please treat Hans as a guest of honor, show him around, show him stuff this village. And the two bodyguards who just so happen to be showing Hans around are the very same executioners who killed his wife and kid back in the day. So Hans is escorted first to a hot springs bath by one of the executioners. They're having a laugh. He's like, oh, you Koreans, you don't have this in Korea, do you? Hans says, no. And the bodyguard's like, this is why Japan is much better. This is natural. We have these everywhere. And they have a laugh. So they're sitting in the bath, just conversing. The bodyguard asks why Hans' Japanese is so good. Hans says, I do business quite frequently with Japan, so I have to learn the language. Bodyguard laughs. The room is getting quite foggy. Hans says he'll be right back one moment. He enters the fog, and underneath his clothes, he takes out a blade, and he returns to the hot springs bath with the bodyguard. The bodyguard says something to Hans. Well, actually, Hans whispers something. The bodyguard says, what did you say? Hans says it again. Bodyguard says, come closer, I can't really hear you. Hans gets closer, and with a swift strike, stabs the bodyguard in the abdomen. The bodyguard is shocked. His eyes are blown up. Hans looks him straight in the eyes and reveals his identity. You killed my wife and child X years ago. My name is Hans, and I'll see you in hell. So he leaves the body there, goes on about his business. The next day, he's escorted. News of this bodyguard's murder gets across the shogun's manor. They're all panicking. They think there's an assassin here trying to get the trying to kill the shogun. The next bodyguard asks Hans if he knows anything about it since he was last seen with this particular bodyguard. Hans says, no, we just went to the baths and I decided to have an early night, so I left. And the bodyguard was still in the baths when I left. So the bodyguard says, oh, well, that guy probably had it coming. He did a lot of bad things in the past, And Hans says, okay, sure. So he goes with this bodyguard to dinner, and they start ripping shots of sake. They start getting drunk. But, they're having a good time, they're partying. But when the bodyguard goes to the bathroom, excuses himself to go to the bathroom, Hans pulls out a vial of liquid, only a few drops, but he pours this liquid into the shot glass of this bodyguard. The bodyguard returns from his bathroom break, and Hans says, "Let me pour you another round." Pours a round of sake, pours himself one. And he says, "Cheers." And they both take the shot. The bodyguard drinks it up, but Hans decides not to take the last shot and he puts it down. The bodyguard's like, "What are you doing? Can you not handle your liquor?" And Hans is like, "No, I can handle it just fine." Then within a few seconds, the bodyguard puts his hand on his own throat and he starts choking. He starts gagging. And Hans leans close to the bodyguard and says, "Did you know the pit viper is the most poisonous snake in Korea? What you just drank was 3 bites of a pit viper." And the bodyguard can't talk. His throat is closing up. His eyes are getting bloodshot. And he says, "Before you go, I want you to know, I'm Hans, and you killed my wife and child 2 years ago. And this is what you get." And the bodyguard, after hearing Hans's words, dies with bloodshot eyes right then and there. So Hans, again, goes about the next day. The Shogun's manor is getting panicked because another bodyguard has died. They don't suspect Hans at all. It's now the day that Hans is supposed to look at the wares of the Shogun. The Shogun is supposed to show him his selection of slaves, show him plots of land that are available for him to purchase and invest in. Hans shows up at the Shogun's manor, and he spots out of the corner of his eye a familiar face, a girl, and he can't quite put in his head where he knows this girl from. And then as she turns around, he gets a better look at her face. He realizes it's the same girl that he saved so many years ago, and now she's a servant at the Shogun's manor. So Hans pulls her aside just to confirm, tells her a certain date and the village name, says, "Did I save you that day?" And she drops everything that she's carrying, and she recognizes Hans. So together, they hatch a plan on how she would sneak Hans into the Shogun's manor in the middle of the night. She opens a gate and leaves it open, unlocked. So that night, Hans sneaks into the Shogun's manor, makes his way into the Shogun's room. He has a blade. He puts it against the Shogun's throat, and he quickly taps the Shogun awake. The Shogun awakes to a cold feeling of a steel blade against his throat, and Hans looking over him. He says, "What are you doing?" He said, "Don't move, do everything I say, and maybe I'll let you live." So he escorts the Shogun into another room where the Shogun sees his wife and his own child tied up there on the floor. The Shogun desperately asks Hans, "What are you doing?" Like, "I'll do anything. What is it do you want? Do you want money? You can have the slaves and these plots of lands for free. Just let myself and my family live." Hans says, "I can't do that." Because then reveals his identity to the Shogun. "You killed my family so many years ago. Now I'm here to get my revenge." The Shogun tries to desperately apologize, saying, it shouldn't be personal. He had to do what he had to do, and Hans disobeyed the guild's law to begin with. Hans says he doesn't care, unsheaths his katana and takes a sling and cuts off the Shogun's arm. The Shogun is screaming in pain, while his wife and child in the background are shrieking. in horror. And then Hans, he sees the Shogun. He says, I'm not like you. I'll let your family go. But you will die today. And he goes on a swinging frenzy, starts slashing everywhere, leaving the Shogun in a bloody mess on the floor. He cuts off the rope that was holding wife and child hostage, telling them to run away. In a few minutes, the guards of the Shogun quickly fill the room. They look in horror at their Shogun lying dead on the ground. And they hold their spears, their swords up to Hans, and they start to attack. But Hans is a great warrior. He ends up fighting off these guards, but he's dealt a fatal blow. He's sitting there bleeding out. The girl sees Hans bleeding on the floor. She runs over to him, tries to stop the bleeding, tries to cover it up, and Hans says, it's too late. And he tells the girl to run. Tells her to leave. The girl hesitantly leaves. And while Hans knows that she's gone, he picks up a lantern that has a bright flame in it, and he just smashes it on the ground. The flames quickly engulf everything within the Shogun's manor. And the girl, while she's having left the Shogun's manor, looks behind her and sees a flame engulfing the entire manor, smoke bellowing everywhere. And that is the end of the Shogun and Hans.
I like that we both embellished this a little bit and improved scenes in here. Definitely felt way more rounded out. I still think some of the other paths that you brought up are very interesting and potentially better, but that was a really good. I think we knocked it out of the park. I think this is actually a quality idea.
Very good.
An outline.
It's very good.
I think it's something that it has some legs.
Yeah, I think so. The whole time I was like, I need these guys to die, like a very uncomfortable death.
That was I didn't see the snake. I didn't know the snake thing was going to come in there, but that came in there. I was like, whoa, okay, all right.
Well, I wanted them to poison him for sure. I just didn't know with what, and I was like, what makes sense here? And I was just like quickly Googling, what's the most poisonous snake in Korea? It's like a pit viper. I was like, all right, I'll use a pit viper.
Why not? Man, I think we knocked it out of the park. Let's, but again, as everyone knows, and if you're new, we're going to see what AI can do.
We're going to see what this AI can generate. And I have a feeling it's going to lose. That was pretty good.
I have a feeling it's going to have a hard time with this one. This one was very well put. A little nervous, but I think it was very well put.
Let's see here. Log in. Yeah, that was interesting. That was kind of crazy because at the last minute we were like, all right, let's go with Samurai. Right?
Yeah, it was a last minute audible, but I think we made it work.
Oh, absolutely. All right, let me share my screen here. Mr. Chat GPT, can you create a story using the words cupboard, horizon, disaster, deprivation, and consumer. Have the story take place in a samurai era. Themes or words in the story. Have the story take place in the samurai era and make it about revenge. Yeah. All right. Let's see what it spits out. That was the word I was looking for. I was like, what time period is this? And they just said feudal Japan. I couldn't remember what it was called. It was on the tip of my tongue. Tatsuo, huh? I like that name.
That's a good name.
Tatsuo.
You have a battle sequence here, it sounds like. Band of warriors.
A bringer of justice.
The bringer of justice. That might have to be ours.
You know, I love these titles they come up with. What's this one? Samurai era revenge story.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Once upon a time in feudal Japan, there lived a samurai named Tatsuo. Tatsuo lived a life of luxury as a trusted advisor to the local daimyo. I don't even know what that is. Enjoying the fruits of his master's wealth and power. But all of that changed when a terrible disaster struck the land, leaving the people in a state of deprivation. The once thriving cities were now plagued by famine and poverty, and Tatsuo found himself facing the harsh reality of a world he no longer recognized. Tatsuo's anger and frustration grew as he watched his once proud countrymen reduced to scavenging in the streets for scraps of food. He could no longer stand idly by as the powerful lords hoarded their wealth while the people suffered. So he decided to take matters in his own hands and seek revenge against the consumers who he believed were responsible for the nation's suffering. Tatsuo set on a journey to the horizon, where he knew wealthy and powerful kept their vast reserves of food and riches locked away in towering cupboards. He was determined to break into these cupboards and distribute their contents to the people, bringing an end to their deprivation. As Tatsuo approached his destination, he encountered a band of Ronin, or masterless samurai, who had also grown tired of the injustice and hardship inflicted upon the people. They joined Tatsuo in his quest for justice, and together they stormed the fortress of the wealthy consumers. The battle was fierce, and Tatsuo and his band of warriors fought bravely, but in the end, they emerged victorious. They broke open the cupboards and distributed the food and riches to the people, bringing joy and hope to a land that had only known suffering. From that day forward, Tatsuo was hailed as a hero among the people and a symbol of hope in a world that had been scarred by disaster and deprivation. He had taken revenge against those who had caused so much suffering, and in doing so, he had brought peace and prosperity to his people. And so, the once proud samurai became a legend, remembered for generations to come as the defender of the common man and the bringer of justice in a world where it was short supply. Okay, interesting.
I think it wasn't half bad. However, the idea of like he reaches the end or he reaches his goal and is to open the cupboard so that way, like, seems kind of like you have this like big tale, because it's actually it started off like it's trying to bring about like a pretty epic tale.
Yeah.
And then the solution is something so small.
Basically, he was Japanese Robin Hood.
Right. Yeah.
And I was just laughing. It's like all these people stored their wealth in cupboards.
Almost like what? It's like trying to be something epic, and then the solution is the small thing, which is cupboards, which all these wealthy are just hiding it in there, and it's just like not really realistic.
Yeah,
but it's not. It wasn't like with some detailed changes. It's not terrible.
It wasn't terrible.
Yeah,
and it did include some like historical.
I forgot about
historical denominations.
Yeah, like Ronin. Like I forgot
Ronin. Yeah, Ronin, feudal Japan.
Yeah,
daimyo. I don't even know what that is, but
I think this one might be close too. Like this might be the second time that it's gotten somewhere where it's like you could pull that. You have to change the why and the how. Like this whole idea with the cupboards, the way they're using it is just not. It doesn't match the epicness that it's trying to convey with everything else.
Yeah, not quite. It started off all right, but does not hold a candle to what we created today.
I think
with Mr. Hans.
I think if our story's here, the AI today came right about here.
I think so.
Or right here. I mean, it's not bad. It's not a bad story. It just doesn't make sense to a degree. But it could be easily fixed.
It could.
Yeah.
It could. For sure. All right. Now it's time.
Yeah.
Give our tale a title to make it official.
The Bringer of Justice. Hans
Hans the Ronin.
Hans the Ronin. Hans the Samurai.
Hans the Ronin.
It's not bad.
A Ronin's Revenge.
A Ronin's Revenge.
A Ronin's...
The Shogun's Mistake.
It was his mistake.
You're about to have a pretty big mistake. A Ronin's Revenge.
A Ronin versus the Shogunate. Ronin's...
Is there a movie that's just called Ronin? I feel like
there is, yeah. It's definitely not about samurai, though.
No, it's not.
I've seen it before, a long time ago.
Yeah, no, it's not.
A samurai's dying wish.
Samurai's dying wish.
Dishonorable.
The Way of the Warrior.
The Way of the Sword.
Mercenaries.
The sword craves blood. The katana. Dishonorable. Because he does kill those guys in a dishonorable way.
Yeah.
Horizon?
Yes.
That could be.
He wants to leave his home.
Could be one too.
He watches it on the horizon, you know?
Ronin's Freedom.
Ronin Slave. Doesn't even go together.
Unknown lands. Beyond the horizon is Korea.
Oh, I got it. All right. I think. Well, no. Like something like the clan.
Something the clan.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, it's pretty much about his clan. Like, the whole thing is him and his clan, him getting revenge on his clan. It could be the clan. It could be the revenge of the clan. The revenge.
A Ronin's Justice. Exiled. Path of Exile. That's a game.
A clan.
Sounds
a
like
clan's mistake. Samurai clan. Samurai clan.
A samurai's exile. Exiled samurai. Samurai Hans.
Hans the Revenger.
Hans wants blood.
Hans Revenge.
Hans sword. Hans katana.
Hans Revenge.
Hans exile. The path of the exiled. Betrayed.
Hans Betrayal.
Hans Betrayal. That's not bad either.
Hans Betrayal. A samurai's betrayal.
A samurai's betrayal. That's not bad.
I think that's the one.
That might have to be the one.
A samurai
betrayal.
Or Ronin's betrayal.
I mean, technically, it wasn't a Ronin. He did have a master.
Yeah. All right.
He became one.
Right.
In the end.
So,
Samurai's betrayal.
Samurai's betrayal.
You heard it there, folks. This is a Samurai's betrayal. Appreciate you for tuning in.
Yep.
And next week, we'll be back with another epic tale. Or not. We'll see.